December 28th. I'm calling the regular meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the Port of Coupeville meeting for December 28th, 2022 at 1 p.m. to order. And the next thing on the agenda is the Pledge to Allegiance. So if people will find a flag and face it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna just tell you guys one thing, and that is I am here at home to wait for a delivery. So if I put you on mute and step out, that's the reason why they showed up. Okay.
Okay. So next item on our agenda is roll call. David?
David Day, District 1, present.
John?
John Callahan, District 3, present.
And John Mishazik, District 2 is present. And we have staff, Mary and Chris available at our meeting as well. Item 4 is changes to the agenda. And I'm kind of thinking that we need under item 5, under commission action, we need approval of vouchers and meeting minutes because were sent meeting minutes.
This is, we do that in January for the previous month. So,
Okay, so just hold on to this for the next
Yeah.
month.
so on January 11th, you guys will be approving the minutes for December 14th and December 28th.
Today, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Appreciate you thinking about that.
So any other changes to the agenda?
Well, I was thinking about, Colin, are you still there?
I am, yes.
I do have Colin set up under 8.2. I know it's hopefully going to be a quick meeting, but since he is here, I was wondering if we could take 8.2 and move it in front of 7.1 under old business and start off the meeting after public comment with his presentation. Is that okay, since he
I
is?
don't have any problem with that.
Okay.
I don't know that item 9 is needed. I don't have any updates from our last meeting other than a scheduled meeting with the one of the county commissioners and the county administrator on January 3rd. And that would be all the news I would share in that segment anyway. So unless there's something else you guys want to talk about in that.
I agree that we could probably drop that off the agenda. Is that what you're saying, David?
Yes.
Okay. John, do you understand what he's saying, that there's nothing new to report until he has those meetings with the county?
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay.
Unless somebody else has something for that topic, I don't have anything new.
I'll cross it off. I'm gonna move 8.2 to be before 7.1.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you're doing that, Chris. I think, you know, I was getting a little stressed out by having so many people waiting around, you know, tying up their time, you know, that we maybe need to, in future agendas, you know, maybe have think a little bit harder about the actual sequence of events, so we don't have, you know, public officials, elected officials waiting around, you know, cooling their jets. So anyway, we've done item 5. No, we've done item 4. Now item 5 is where we're actually going to take action, and we need to review the vouchers. I did notice, Don, that you sent a little highlights of some of the atypical entries on the AP report.
Correct. I don't think I left anything out. We did have a guardian security bill as well, but I believe that's the routine check that they do.
Yes.
How,
Well, there's an annual,
not a semi-annual or annual?
it's annual. Our monitoring through them is an annual cost because we get a discount when we do it, we pay it. in advance.
And I noticed under the attorney bill that we had two different allocations, one to the port and one to Greenbank Farm.
Oh, yeah, one was for
The lease.
advice on the levy. And then the other one was due to a tenant.
Redfish, bluefish.
So
For
Any-
$2,700, it cost us $2,700 to talk about that guy in Redfish, Bluefish.
Well, to mitigate the brand new lease template as well, David. So it's just not redfish, bluefish. He sent us 5 lease templates that we could use across the board on all tenants. So it was a lot more detailed than that. So he basically redid our entire lease templates.
They needed to be done.
And they needed to be done. So this is actually yay.
And what did we have All Island Lock and Key do again?
We had new doors placed and new locks placed in barn A, and we also wanted to get them set up on the master system. This is kind of a project in motion, as well as the wharf. The key staff in each property should have one key to open all doors.
Oh, that was due to the approved projects last meeting for Home Depot's doors, right? With
So those
both the
doors
market
were
and-
installed.
This is separate. No,
Oh, it's
those
separate?
doors, I'm waiting for that check to come in. Oh, I need to pick that up, Dawn, from Home
Yeah.
Depot. Was that at your office? I
It
just
should
didn't
have
get-
been. It should have been. I thought that you picked it up already. It's been kind of crazy with the holiday and everything.
Oh, I didn't pick it up already.
Well, sorry about that.
Well, I need to get that from you. No, this is just continuing with our master key program. When I got here, there was a separate key for every door and only one master key that opened up 2 of how many doors at barn A. So I am in the process of having one master key open up every single door. So it involved rekeying some locks. It involved replacing some doorknobs that were almost broken. It's daily maintenance.
Dawn, I'm not seeing the voucher cover document.
It should have been sent to you. Let me go back to my computer to make sure it was sent.
I've got 2 emails, but it's got just the voucher data, I got 2 emails from you that has the revised AP report, but not the actual,
Oh, Bill, sorry about that.
okay.
Yeah, I'm just seeing the corrected AP. report.
My computer is a little bit small at home when I'm looking at the files from the remote access.
Oh, we can't do 5 until we see that, right?
Yeah, I'm sending it right now. Let's see here. Sent. There you go.
Yeah. Okay, so we reviewed the AP report. David, any more questions of the payables? John, any questions of the payables?
None. There we go.
So David, other than the lawyer fee getting straightened out about why it was so high, are there any other questions?
No, I have no other questions.
Okay, then I'm going to make a motion to approve the Port of Coupeville's voucher approval document dated December 28th, 2022 for vouchers number 22-1234 through 22-1245 for a total of $12,803.82. Payroll EFT 1206 for $10,698.73, and electronic vouchers 12-1207 through 12-1209 for $5,806.64, with the total voucher amount being $29,309.19. Can I have a second so we can have a discussion?
Second.
Okay. Why are this time the electronic vouchers are not EFTs under labor and industry and that last little section, Dawn?
Oh, let's see, I opened it up so that I can look at it with you.
David, John, is that my imagination that normally those are EFTs?
Well, no, labor and industry and EAMS, which is the employment security deposit or employment security, are electronic fund transfers. So they're a little bit different than the EFTPSs, which is a IRS 941 payment that we do with every payroll. The labor and industries, which should have been titled Department of Labor and Industries, and the EAMS should have been titled Department of Employment Security. Those are fourth quarter liabilities. And we were able to process fourth quarter payroll liabilities right after the last payroll of December was processed. And the only one that we're not able to process is the FMLA, which is the Family Leave Act. For some reason, they will not let us process it until the 1st of January.
Well, I think John's question is, why does it say 12-1207 instead of EFT-1207?
Oh, I gotcha. I don't know. There's no reason. That should have been EFT, but it's not gonna affect anything.
Will it cause a little
They're
bit of
still
confusion
under
at an
the-
audit 3 or 4 years from now?
No, because they're still under electronic vouchers too.
Okay. So in a spirit of discussion, David, John, are you cool with the way it's presented to us to approve that document as presented? Or is anybody wanting it to be slightly modified to say EFT 1207, EFT 1208, EFT 1209? What's the read on that from the two of you?
Well, I don't understand the inconsistency, so that it seems to me that it should be listed one way or the other, and normally it is in fact listed as an EFT, is it not?
Yes, correctly.
So what is the, I mean, can't we just correct that before we?
I can definitely correct it before I submit it to the county. And then add you to the email when I submit it.
So it'd be
So-
1207 EFT.
Yeah.
But then
It won't
don't you-
let me correct it on the email. I would have to go into the PDF and make the correction and then replace it in the email.
So we're going to, if we make our motion,
Oh, why don't you just vote? Why don't we vote on the motion as it stands, John, and then we'll go back.
okay, I'm going to call the motion to approve our voucher approval document dated December 28th, 2022 as presented. All in favor, say aye. Nobody's in favor of approving it?
Not as presented.
That's right, not as presented.
Okay, so
So motions,
Now-
Motion's denied.
Denied. Good.
So now I'll make a
Um,
motion. I'll make a motion to approve vouchers number 22-1234 through 22-1245 for $12,803.82. Electronic vouchers for payroll EFT 1206 in the amount of $10,698.73, and electronic vouchers to be corrected to EFT 1207, 1208, and 1209 in the amount of $5,806.64. The total
second that.
being $29,309.19.
I second.
And let's call that motion. All in favor of David's motion for our voucher approval, amended voucher approval document, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. So we will need to. How are we going to
will-
document that? That motion occurred for, normally we sign off on,
We're gonna move on with the meeting and Don's gonna correct that document and resend it out to you in an email, right, Don?
Yes, I will send the email train with the corrected copy of the voucher approval for you. In fact, I've already done the correction and I've already saved it as a PDF. I just have to assert it to the email and then I'll be sending it out in like 2 minutes.
Okay, great. And then again, just make sure.
And-
you copy this.
and that will be the one that we will reply to all,
Yes.
because it
Correct.
will be the amended one we just approved, okay?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay,
Procedural question, Mr. Chairman. We just voted no, or didn't vote rather in favor of the first motion. We voted in favor of the second motion. My question is, the first motion that was made, could not that have been amended during the process?
Yes, it could have been.
Opposed to going through this other thing, huh?
Yeah, but the way David did it just backed up and made it cleaner, but you're right, Commissioner Callahan, that could have been amended.
Okay, just for my, in the
You're on it.
future. Thank you.
You're on it. Okay,
so we're going to be waiting for Dawn to send out the corrected voucher document that we did pass. And that's the one where we do, I, John Mashazik, approve this document, and then reply all, then it gets a train through, everybody else to approve it also. So I'm waiting for that to show up.
And it is pressed send right now. You should be receiving it shortly. Gotta love technology and being able to log into your computers. Feel like I'm working on 3 computers right now.
Okay, we're gonna hit this on it all.
I also have some news. It's nice to have a full staff for a change. We actually have gotten the W-2s done and the quarterlies first, and then the W-2s with everything except for the FMLA. And everybody will be receiving their W-2s in the mail. Since we do direct deposit, I'm not going to be holding them and stuffing them with checks. I'm going to go ahead and send them out in the mail on January 1st.
And Dawn, what period does that cover for payment?
That is for, oh, you talking about the W-2s?
Yeah.
It covers the fiscal period of 2022. All payroll.
I'm curious to find out, I mentioned this to Chris earlier. I'm curious to find out when I'm gonna start seeing money. Because if it's before the end of the year, I need to make some charitable donations.
No, your first check will be
Yeah.
on the 10th. So at the end of this month, you will be submitting your, I guess they call them a time, I'm not sure what the commissioner's specific title is for that form, but it's a
Quarterly
time
report.
part of what you've done and what meetings you've attended.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not sure, have you received a form to fill out yet?
No, I have not.
No.
Okay, we'll send you
I
one.
I don't think so. Anyway, did I get one or?
No, because after you and I spoke that day, John, our network crashed and we lost everything. I have a backup and I accessed it already, and I will try to dig out one of those reports for you. So that's a reminder too, to John and David, that those quarterly reports are due. So,
Yes, it's called a commissioner activity report, John.
okay,
And it has, the ability to list the meeting dates that you've attended. So, and it signs off that you certify that you did attend, meetings, whatever. So Chris, you're going to get him a copy of that.
I will get you not only a copy, but I'll send you a copy of another one so you can just see how easy it is to fill out. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so have we slugged our way through item 5 totally?
Yes.
If so, then I'm going to item 6, which is public comment. Time set aside for members of the public to speak to the board regarding subjects of concern, interest, or items on the agenda, or will take information under advisement. Generally, will not take any action unless it's emergent. To ensure your comments are recorded, please state your name and city of residence and limit comments to 5 minutes. Chris, are you seeing anybody raising their hand to do public comment?
Give me a few more seconds, not at this time, no, but I know everyone here on the screen, so I'm going to say at this point, no, there's no public comment, John.
Okay, in which case we're going to go item 7, old business, but we've inserted item 8.2, introduction of Greenbank Farms Solar, and Colin Neckerman from EDF Renewables is going to talk to us. So
Yeah, so let me introduce Colin here real quick. Let me get this up here just to see if I can, you guys can see this okay?
yeah.
Oh, I went into presentation mode. Well, first of all, let me introduce Colin. Colin and I just met here about a week and a half ago, and I'll let him introduce himself as well as his company and his relationship with PSE. But the reason we spoke and opened up a dialogue was they are looking to create a partnership with PSE, and I believe it involves a grant. And again, this is being laid out over the next year of increasing the capacity of solar energy. And the Greenbank Farm was one of the targets that was sought at to see if there's an option to grow the solar capabilities here at the Greenbank Farm. And so I've asked Colin to put together a presentation that would kind of introduce the concept, introduce the idea, and some options for the board to at least think about. And then if it's something that the board is interested in, then we could bring Colin back in meetings. So with that, Colin, I did go to presentation mode, but I see that you have a notes thing or a next slide here. So if this is okay, I'll continue, or if not, I can have you bring up your presentation and let you share. What would you like, bud?
Yeah, if it's easy enough for me to share my screen, I can go ahead and do that.
Okay, let me go ahead 1 second, please. Okay.
All right, perfect.
Go ahead and share. There you go.
Perfect. Well, thanks everyone for giving us the time today to come join and like Chris said, just very preliminary introduction to the idea and kind of what we're looking for and the possibilities that we're exploring. And I'll note my colleague John is on the phone as well. So at the end, if there's more questions, he he might be able to jump into if there's anything I can't answer. But like we said, we'll just kind of very 5-minute preliminary overview of what we're looking for and some of the ideas we had to potentially move forward with. So I'm calling in from California. John and I are based here in California, but we're focused on the western states and developing solar and storage projects across the West. Just very, very briefly about our company. We're one of the largest renewables developers in the country, a full service, from finding the land to building the projects and doing the engineering to maintaining them over the course of their life, and have been in the US for 30 plus years and developed many thousands of megawatts and gigawatts of solar and wind projects, and worked with a lot of different folks that you can see there. But enough about that. We can always talk more about some of our background there, but John and I, like I mentioned, are on our distribution scale team, and we focus on building projects, solar and storage projects that are of kind of the community scale level, like the one that you have currently at Green Bank Farm, but also a bit bigger, from kind of the 1 to 50 megawatt range generally, which is, ranges from 20 to a couple hundred acres kind of size projects. So that's our bread and butter and what we focus on doing around the country, and specifically John and I here in the West. So we're looking to, we've been in touch with Puget Sound Energy over the last few years and talking about different projects that we can develop. And in this instance, we're specifically looking to respond to an upcoming RFP that Puget Sound Energy is releasing likely next month, late next month or sometime in Q1 of next year, to source 80 megawatts of solar and 25 megawatts of storage over the next couple of years. And so our goal as a developer that has been talking with them and working with them is to propose several projects to them early next year, and hopefully move those forward in the coming couple of years. And just as a side note on bullet point 2 there, you're probably familiar with the reason Puget Sound is moving quickly to build a lot of solar and renewables is in part due to the state legislation to quickly grow the renewables portfolio in Washington State over the next couple of decades. So we're in the midst of our process of doing outreach. We start with public land, reaching out to cities and counties in Puget Sound's territory to try to find kind of mutually beneficial public land that might be useful for to lease out for this project. And as listed here, the length of the long-term lease that we're looking for is about 25 years, with the option to extend for another 5 to 15 years. That's kind of the typical full life of a project nowadays is 35 to 40 years to keep it online and commissioned. And we're looking for between 20 to 75 acres to build 5 to 10 megawatts of solar and storage. So just for reference, I think the current Green Bank Farm is about 150 kilowatts. And so 5 to 10 megawatts is roughly 30 times, 5 megawatts would be about 30 times that production of electricity, or about, I think the current footprint of the project is about 1 acre. And so we'd ideally be looking for about 20 acres, which I'll discuss in a moment. And of course, we're ideally looking for land that is near a PSE-owned substation or distribution power line. So the projects that we build interconnect directly with your common, most common power lines that you see running through neighborhoods, rather than those very large transmission lines that I think also are some near Green Bank. So just a very preliminary, potential idea of something that we could potentially partner on together at Green Bank would be either expanding the existing project, which, you know, might be one of the routes forward, or even if there is a strong inclination or the current contract is the way things are, if there's an interest in replacing the existing project, we could also explore that once we, you know, kind of talk a bit further. But just to give you a rough idea of what a kind of expanded project might look like, you know, if we were to expand to about 20 to 25 acres, you can see in the top picture there is about the 3 parcels that we're looking at with a white star on kind of the current existing solar array that's there. And the bottom two images here show roughly what the project could potentially look like, the footprint of the project there, with the kind of rough sketch of what the panels might look like in the bottom right corner there. So again, this is kind of just a very preliminary idea to give you a rough idea of what a footprint of this size project could look like and reach that kind of 4.5 to 5 megawatt generation. This is, I think, a good point to mention here, that we kind of contrary to the current situation that you all have at Green Bank with, I think, having ownership of the project, or having multiple kind of owners there, and doing some of the maintenance on the project, or helping with that. This would instead be, you know, an outright land lease for the solar project. So we would be just leasing the land from the Port of Coupeville, and building the project and owning the project and selling that power directly to Puget Sound Energy for them to provide to the local community. But, you know, there wouldn't be any obligations on your end to, you know, maintain the project or decommission it at the end of its life, or those types of things. It's a kind of outright lease that we're talking about here. But of course, open to exploring other ideas as well. But some of the basic, you know, benefits that I think you're probably already familiar with a lot of these, since there's already an array here. But you know, the big one is that we'd probably be looking at around $1,200 per acre per year for the life of that 25 to 40 year lease. So roughly 30,000. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, sorry, I thought I heard someone chime in. So you know, roughly 30,000 a year in revenue for the Port of Coupeville. If we were looking at 30 acres, 25 to 30 acres there, you know, so $1 million, 1.2 over the course of the life of that lease, as well as some additional payments, you know, initially to secure the site and an option to lease. And then just, you know, I think a couple of the other things that you're familiar with here, bullet points of, you know, the economic impact that we source and hire local crews and to help build the project. And, you know, that's usually dozens of construction jobs for the first couple of years of that construction, the project, but also, you know, the kind of indirect economic benefits of, you know, staying at hotels and restaurants and all that good stuff. And yeah, you know, you're already familiar with kind of what the current project looks like, and the you know, pretty limited you know, visual aspect it has there. Of course, this would be a bit bigger of a footprint, but we're happy to you know, still discuss any you know, other improvements and things that we can do there to, you know, mitigate any concerns around site. There would be a fence around the project, similar to, I think, what's currently there, but otherwise, you know, it's a not too intrusive of a project. I'll just mention a couple other options. You know, we of course want to work closely with the community, ensure folks are you all and others in the community are you know, happy with the project going in, and you know, work together to find out what's kind of the best footprint or project here And so we can also explore other opportunities of, community benefits. There's a couple pictures here of what we call agrivoltaics now, which is kind of incorporating pollinator-friendly plants below the panels and bringing in bees, or a lot more folks are doing now sheep grazing underneath the panels. So there's kind of
What was that? What was that term you just used?
Agrivoltaics.
No,
So
the
kind of-
next one, the
sheep grazing and
sheep grazing. Okay.
Yeah. So in the bottom right-hand corner there, you can see a picture. There's a lot more folks, and we've done a couple of them where you actively graze sheep underneath the panels, and can have some additional revenue and farm in there. But that also helps with the vegetation management underneath the panels. So it's kind of a win-win. And we could also explore, I know Chris briefly mentioned that this is a pretty active walking area and dog walking area. So, we could explore EDF, providing some additional funding for things like dog park improvements or just, generally other ways that we can help, make it more enticing to bring the project here and help ensure that everybody's happy with how the land is being used there. I just threw a couple other pictures up here. We can, of course, if there's interest in this moving forward, we're happy to talk about, potential footprint and where a larger or smaller project could fit along the land here. But I will stop there, and my contact information is here. Of course, like Chris mentioned, we've been chatting, so happy to keep the conversation going if there's interest. And we'll likely be up in the area later this month or later in January. So we're also happy to come meet and talk any further about this if there's. But I will stop there, and if there's any questions, happy to help answer. Yeah, David.
Zoning for the tracks that you're looking at?
Yeah. So I think Chris mentioned there's a possibility, right, that it might be zoned agriculturally currently. And we've actually been in close discussion. We've actually been exploring some other sites with Island County and the Public Works Department there. And so we can typically, once we find out for sure what the zoning is there, we can kind of dive deeper into, the special use permits or things that may be required for this. But typically it's, we hope we can probably navigate that, but happy to explore that further.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a few things. There were 3 flags that went up immediately. One was zoning, because it would be put in agricultural land. I don't know. I know that the current solar farm is on ag land. So it'd be interesting to see how that all went down and if there are limits and so forth. Obviously, there is none when you read the special use district. The second is the original idea, and again, this is Colin just throwing ideas out there, giving you an idea of what 20 to 25 acres represents. But the current plan is covering the 7 paddocks that One Willow Farm is currently using. So that would probably not work. It would have to be north of lots. Yeah, exactly. It would have to be north of that and butt up to the 23 acres that's considered medium impact recreation, right? And that's just being real about the footprint.
Well, my question is, have you looked at the site on the other side of Juan Road in the triangle?
Yeah, we actually talked about that because that's one of the first things I brought up to Colin, and I believe that only entails about what, 5 acres at best?
Yeah, I want to say it might be 12 acres, but it's there's also a little bit of, if you notice down here in the bottom picture, that there's a slant there. There's actually a waterway or a wetland, technically a flood zone there. And so I think that smaller parcel had also some similar wetland concerns that, but we can certainly take another look at that and just make sure, that's not a potential option.
Senator Callahan had his hand up. Can we,
Yeah, my, my questions are a little bit less technical. So if the port were to grant a lease for 25 years, all of the power that would be generated would be sold to the PSE, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, there would not be
Correct.
any power being used by the buildings on the Green Bank farm that would be reduced by whatever the solar panel are producing or not? Is that a clear, you know?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Yeah, it's kind of what we, often call the front of the meter versus behind the meter, so behind the meter would be something that's feeding your buildings, whereas a front of the meter, in this case, what PSE is looking for is to connect directly into the grid. And so you're right that we would likely be exploring selling all of the power directly to Puget Sound Energy. But we're of course open to if there is interest in offsetting some of your operations, or we're happy to try to discuss what that could look like if it's a similar array. But yeah, we can certainly talk more about that.
so
Thank you.
my question is, in the introduction to your company, there were references to storage. And, with some of the power outages we've been having with the windstorms and the weather, is there any potential for storage of energy to occur at Green Bank Farm?
You would need a
Yeah.
battery.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad you brought that up, because I think I kind of glossed over it a little bit in the benefits. But yeah, there absolutely is potential to include storage here, and that would likely help with resilience during storms if that battery system is located in your community, and the grid is affected outside of your community, that would likely help, might help there. So there's definitely potential for that, and they are looking to source 25 megawatts of storage, and so we could look at a storage component here.
Some time ago, I actually looked at some of the ag solar projects, and they would actually have some of these panels like 10 feet in the air, so that cows could go underneath the solar panels. And so, because that is an area that we do want it to be agriculturally focused. I'm not sure we would ever have sheep, but certainly we got chickens and pigs, and so it'd be interesting to, have you ever done a project that the panels are way off the ground?
Yeah, there. I'll send you along an example. Yeah, those are becoming increasingly common, and there's some really amazing projects where there's crop production and cow, roaming underneath those. Those do introduce a little bit of extra cost up front to the additional material typically. So kind of we're definitely interested in trying to explore that if there's interest. And ultimately, it might be up to PSE whether they're, kind of willing to look at that or pick that project. But I think they would have an interest in it, and we're happy to explore what that could look like. But I'll send some more examples over, because it really is a big goal of ours to build more of what we call those agrivoltaic projects.
Super.
Another question. John just mentioned storage, and I thought you said 25 megawatts of storage. Is that what it was?
That's in total what PSE is looking to source in the next couple of years. But for this project, it would be much smaller number than that. Probably, I think probably around a few hundred kilowatt hours. But John, my colleague John, feel free to jump in if I'm wrong there.
Well, the basis of my question basically is how long if we have had recently a lot of power outages, and some of them have lasted for like 3 to 4 days. And I have no idea of what the electrical consumption is on a daily average. But I've been told that when you put solar on your house, you can get high storage batteries that will last for, maybe a week. And there are some people say, no, it doesn't, but my question is, how long would the storage unit support the area before it ran out?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't want to kind of give you a wrong answer. So if it's okay, I'll circle back with you on that. Or John, my colleague John, if you have some thoughts there, feel free. But in this case, since like we said, it's kind of different than a home where the battery is directly powering your home. It's going out to the grid. So it would just kind of depend on where the outage is. If it's a power line down, it just depends right where the area is that the outage is affecting. But typically it's storage is still a newer technology, and there's kind of long duration storage is still something in the works. So it's probably definitely not. I don't think it would be a week long. It's more like several hours of storage that you can power a community likely.
Thanks.
I don't even know well. Okay, any other questions, gentlemen?
I think for an initial dip into the pond of understanding this project, you're certainly hitting on some of critical issues for the port submission in terms of being environmentally friendly. We're already active with a solar project, so we understand some of the complexities of it. I think community input,
Yep.
if we were to move forward on this, you better be ready to strap on your smile and be nice to the community, because it's a pretty when you talk about changing the farm, it really catches their attention, and the dog walkers are an important part of that. So they would need to feel like not getting the short end of the stick.
Yeah.
So I personally thank you for the information, and I guess Chris, our next step would be the three of us to mull it over and render an opinion about what to do next, right?
Yeah, I think just chew on it for a couple of weeks, right? And I can put this on the next agenda just as a discussion item. And in the meantime, I'll work with Colin, and we could zero in on more realistic 20 to 25 acre locations. And in the meantime, Colin, I would work with Island County to even see if this project is possible.
Yeah.
It will be located on 100% agricultural land. And then if this really continues further, then there would need to be a heavy component to have some public hearings, because you are going to have 50 to 100 dog walkers in barn A very upset. And that is my projection. This is not a dog park. They call it a dog park. It's not a dog park. So that would be the next steps, John.
I hear you. Yeah, and we're absolutely, that's one of the first things we do is try to engage as much with the community as we can, and and like I said, we're happy to explore those options to any improvements that we can make to the surrounding area in Green Bank, and where EDF is happy to help propose those too. So, but yeah, I just really appreciate your time and giving us the space here, and we'll certainly continue discussion with the county. We actually had a kind of informal presentation to the county board on a different site, actually just across the street. But it was since it's already a heavily forested site, we wanted to avoid cutting those trees down, and so they actually suggested that we try to work with you all on this area.
Boy, you think dog walkers are tough, trying to cut down some trees.
Exactly. Yeah. No,
David?
avoid that as much as we can.
So-
Yeah, Dave.
Yeah,
So I have two.
David has
I
a
have two
question.
Follow-up questions. The first is, what kind of time frame are you looking at? I mean, I know the RFP hasn't even been put out yet, so.
Yeah. So we would, the RFP is likely to come out late January or so, we hope. And so we would look to be getting in a proposal to PSC in February or March. And then, we would likely have a couple months of their deliberation, and then we would probably be looking at, 6 to 8 months of permitting and getting a final approval for the project. And then beginning construction, maybe 8 to 12 months of construction. About a year of construction. And so I think total timeline, it would be 2024 that we're looking at final completion. But we're happy to kind of give a more detailed timeline estimate as we move forward.
So my other question, you mentioned that you're looking at other properties, and certainly makes sense to me. And just for curiosity's sake, if you're willing to tell us, have you looked at the property across the highway that belongs to the United States Navy?
I don't actually. I don't think we've flagged that as a possibility. We did look at the county-owned land that's right across the street there, across the highway there, but we haven't yet talked with the Navy.
Okay.
But I appreciate that. We typically federal land, takes a good bit longer to get approval and studies done and that kind of thing. So it's usually not, the utility as well as looking to potentially move a little faster, but it's certainly worth exploring.
Well, I'm not suggesting that. I was just curious whether or not you talked with them. So.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. We also are doing, we've in discussion with other localities around the region and some private landowners as well. And so our goal is to have, at least a couple projects that we're working to build for PSC, but that's yet to be seen.
Okay. Thank you.
we're good to go then.
Yeah,
Colin, I think we appreciate the information and we will be in touch, or Chris will be in touch for us, okay?
Yeah. Thank you all so much for having me, and happy holidays, happy New Year.
Thank you.
Same to you.
All right, take care.
Okay, back onto the agenda of 7.1, discussion wharf update, roof and pile projects.
yeah, so right now, nothing new to report with the roof, other than the mid-January, Swenson Say Faget will finish up their engineering. And then they'll get the bid packets out. Everything is moving forward. The architects, they're a sharp team, they're on it. SSF is backlogged a little bit, so that's why they were in a little bit of a lull right now. But it's on target for a March completion date, so that is a good thing. As far as the piles and caps, we did hear back from the Corps late last week from Sarah, and she has sent the entire packet up to her, the next level at the Corps for approval. So we are looking to get our permit any day now. In the meantime, he's finalizing the engineering. And once that is done, we'll put together the bid packet and go to bid, shooting for probably a September or October construction time for the piles and caps. Outside of that, it's exciting that, we can be getting this permit any day. That's all I have for the piles and caps in the roof.
So, Commissioner Callahan, Commissioner Day, I loved your photos that you sent us the other day of the, the water kind of lapping at the bottom of the building. I don't know whether this has been asked before. I kind of thought it had. And I thought maybe the response was kind of like it got handled or brushed off a little bit. But sea level rise super tide, super windstorm, you know, we may end up surplusing the wharf building to the Port of Mabana after that storm because it'll be sitting on their property. How can we have the piling project accommodate sea level rise? Will there be extra piling that the building could actually be strapped to and raised as an option? Is where I'm headed with all this. Can we bulletproof that building being there for 100 years with this project by having the pilings be tall enough to protect it from a super tide, super windstorm, and sea level rise? You see where I'm headed with this?
But I think Kelly LaFave did a good job of going over this in detail at one of our past meetings, and that it would
Is the
be,
answer yes, it can be raised or not?
it was almost, well, the only way that the building could be raised is the building was completely disassembled and removed.
Chris, I think this was the subject matter of the first meeting that I listened to. And I thought there was discussion about how you would raise the building it other than just tearing it totally apart. And I thought that there was a discussion about actually raising the thing up. And somebody was going to talk to the brothers that have run a ship guard down there.
That was Nichols Brothers. No,
Yeah.
the engineer was the way that building is built and the way it's been built upon and changed, it's not built on a typical foundation like a home. It is literally built right out of the decking of the wharf itself. So it was Kelly's professional opinion, and I can check back with him again, but I remember that meeting because I was really anxious to hear what he had to say, was probably the only option is to disassemble the building. And he was very doubtful that that building could be lifted up and put on a barge.
Did anybody check with Nichols to find out whether or not they thought it was possible? Because they've done that kind of stuff before.
Well, Nichols Brothers, they do move homes. We worked with them in looking at the caretaker cottage, but no, not the wharf. I pretty much rested on what Kelly had said. But no, we have not called Nichols to see if that building could be lifted and put on a barge.
So, John, I actually walked around out on the wharf yesterday, about an hour after the highest tide of the day. It wasn't just that water was lapping, water was coming up through the decking. Virtually all of anything underneath the wharf that is infrastructure was in the water, including fuel lines, water lines, sewage lines. The fuel dock itself was literally at the same level as the deck was. And the gangplank to the docks was actually in an upward angle.
Right.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, as I was walking around, I said, this is not sustainable. There was virtually, I won't say there was no wind yesterday, but there was virtually no wind yesterday. So there was no swell, there was no, there was a little bit of wave motion, but probably not more than 4 to 10 inches at any given point. And so I think we should look very closely at trying to determine whether or not there's someone who has any kind of experience with this kind of thing. I don't know if there's marine architects that that know anything about this or are working on this problem. I don't, Kelly's explanation to us, I remember quite clearly that he was quite clear that there was the only way to lift everything up would be to take the structure down carted away, lift everything up and then put it back. So I think this is a real important question that needs to get addressed because, you know, I don't want to spend a couple $1 million and have, you know, the floor of what's inside be washed away every year. You know,
Yeah.
or have,
I mean, I'm halfway tongue in cheek when I talk about it.
move to 9-month tenancies or something and close it off for 3 months.
David,
Commissioner Callahan?
yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying, David. And I know that there are naval and marine architects that deal in this stuff. That's why I was suggesting the shipyard be contacted. I was down there this morning at the high tide this morning, which was about a foot less than what it was yesterday.
Right.
And I surveyed the flooding at the 24 Front Street facility that we have storage, and also talked to the guy who has the bookstore there. And his whole part, bottom part, got flooded.
He had
And
6 inches of
apparently-
water in there.
Yeah, apparently the water was high enough that it actually went over the seawall. That little seawall that's constructed there. And I personally doubt that this is going to be a one-time event. Like, you know, this is not the 100-year storm or anything. And so I think we really need to look at how we're going to protect that building, not just from sea rise, but you know, substantial weather events that will increase the tide above its normal stage.
One comment I have is that, you know, the Titanic only had one interaction with an iceberg. You know, and that's all it takes is one really bad storm combined with, you know, all the other factors. And then tongue in cheek, we will be donating that wood to the Port of Mabana on Camino Island. That's where it's going to end up.
Right.
Now, I'm not sure they're going to want to pay for that wood. So we're at a pivotal point of putting millions of dollars into a project that a month later upon completion could be totally blown over to Camino Island. Are we willing to take that risk without doing our due diligence to find out what the solution might be? And I've watched TV shows where they lift up lighthouses that are 100 feet tall, made out of brick on a bluff, and move it back like 100 feet, lift it up, and gently move it back and set it back down again. And they were made out of bricks.
Yeah,
they
that
didn't
doesn't
just-
take in a buoyancy factor, however.
Well, I'm just saying, where there's a will, there's a way. Now, I think.
Well, I
as
completely
those-
agree with you, John. I think we ought to investigate as many possibilities as there are and see what those possibilities are and what those possibilities would cost. And
And all I would ask is that when we drive those pilings in, we understand whether or not another 3 or 4 feet of piling could be welded onto them. So that the building could be lifted up, beams put under it, strap it together to all those beams, lift it up, put it on a barge, like they do other buildings around the sound. Do what you got to do to rebuild the infrastructure underneath of it, and then drop it back down. Expensive as heck, yeah. But if the community wants that building sitting out there as an icon, then the community is going to have to pony up and help us find the partnerships and money to do a more complex, long-term project to make that a safe for the next 100 years or 250 years, whatever you want to name it. But after seeing your photos, that shocked the H out of me. I could just
it's
say,
not unlike the storm we had last November.
Yeah.
Except last November was a storm.
Yeah, we actually had waves hitting the railing
Right.
of the west wall of the building. Yeah.
Right. So yesterday, when it was, and again, I wouldn't say it was dead calm, like it was pretty calm this morning when I went down there. Yesterday, there was some wind, but the reason that tide was so high was that the barometric pressure created almost a foot of extra tide that was not part of the normal king tide. If you look at the numbers that were projected, the actual tide was almost a foot higher than the projected tide height. And that's, it's not just the lunar
Super tide, king tide.
it's not just the moon that helps create this, it's also the conditions atmospherically that help create this problem. And so, I mean, I don't know if, Chris, if Commissioner Callahan has contacts that he's aware of, if Kelly has contacts with marine architects. I mean, there's got to be other people looking at this problem. There's, we might be the only Mosquito Fleet Wharf, but we're not the only old building hanging out. There's buildings almost as old in Anacortes that are, sitting right over the water that had to have been in, had this effect yesterday. So, and that's got to be true up and down the coast. So, there's probably billions of dollars in it for somebody, if they can figure out the technology to make this kind of thing happen. So,
I think a
my suggestion would be to talk with Kelly first to see if he can push us towards someone else to help us, or get a hold of Nichols Brothers and see if they have a insight into this situation. I mean, it's not like you can. I mean, like the idea of having a big crane lift the whole building up with, multiple straps underneath it and all that kind of stuff doesn't seem possible to me, but I could be dead wrong,
Well, I have two of the tasks that I have after this meeting is to get a hold of both Nichols Brothers, and I'll touch base with Kelly again. And we'll look at options and contact people, maybe have Nichols Brothers come out and look at the building and see what they think. So
When those steel pilings get driven into the ground, how far are they going to stick out?
no, that's a good question. I don't know that answer. I know they have to come up to at least a foot above the base of the wharf, because that's where it will be strapped to the wharf building itself. And it will be hard strapped. It won't be a loose strap. So the whole idea of those 8 piles, 4 east, 4 west, is to be against the structure so the structure doesn't move. It'll just move a little bit, right? So, but I don't know how far it actually comes up above.
So this kind of strikes me as being like an ironworker's question of how do you extend a steel beam again in the future, welding or bolting or whatever, because that gives you the option, for 5 or 10 years down the road that we just, are gambling that super tide, wind, swell, barometric pressure combination, sea level rise doesn't nail us before then.
Yeah, well, that's one of the questions I'm going to ask Kelly. I have 2 questions. I'll ask him about the metal pipe, but the other one I had written down was, can the new piles that are being replaced and driven be expanded? We know the caps can, that's not a question.
Mhm.
I mean, one of the questions I have in my mind is, okay, we go ahead and do the pile and cap project. do we just double up on the caps? Because I know one thing Kelly said was if you raise that building, you have to raise the causeway as well.
Right, I mean, the causeway, I mean, the idea that this building was built 5 feet below the actual height of the adjoining land is just astounding to me, but it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're not talking about just raising the wharf, we're talking about building a new wharf, basically.
It'll be completely disassembled, correct? Done in sections, I'd imagine. But so I'll ask him those questions, because I think everything discussed here is absolutely valid. I'm worried about it too. I've never seen, and Paul, who's been here for 40 years, just shaking his head like I've never seen this. So I'll ask those questions, and as soon as I get the answers, I'll fire it back to the board.
Chris, when you contact Nichols Brothers, if they don't have any, or if that lead doesn't pan out for you, you might just ask them what marine engineering, naval architecture firms are available in this area that you could contact and get more information. Because
Yeah,
I believe that John is correct, and David, these kinds of projects are done. And it may be very, very expensive, but it's not beyond doing.
yeah. Well, we also have our architect and we have our engineer. Swenson Faget is the engineer, and we have our architect as well. So, you know, their opinions are going to be, I'm going to be searching for their opinions too. And Nichols Brothers has 2 branches. I won't be calling the shipyard, I'd be calling the actual moving company that moves houses. We've already been in contact with him for the Sears house here at the farm. So when I call someone, to me, it's never a dead end. You don't have the answer, or the answer is no, where can you send me? So we'll figure it out. We'll make some calls.
So David and John, what are your thoughts about having the paper publish those photos? To let the community know we're not asleep at the wheel.
Oh, I have no problem with that. I mean,
That we're aware of the situation and we're seeking solutions.
Yeah, and I've already been contacted by Karina, as well as Chua and EBs, but Karina's already contacted me from the paper, so I'll see what she wants and see what she wants to do, but I will let her know that the board is actually looking at options to account for sea level rise and these types of storms.
the
Down the
last
road,
thing I would suggest, Chris, pardon my interruption, John. The last thing I would suggest is that we mark our calendars for king tides in the future. They are predictable, so that something like happened underneath 24 Front Street doesn't happen again in terms of losing material or whatever. So,
Well, 24 Front Street is actually set up, and we don't store anything, though we did have a bag of cement that was laying on the ground.
well, you had 5 bags of cement, you had a vacuum cleaner. We also have I mean, there was other stuff in there. Plus that's where the controls for the
fire
the-
suppression.
fire suppression system are.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know how deep the water was. They did put sandbags in front of the screen. But
I was
yeah,
down there this morning and I looked at it and it looked like the water actually got into where the fire suppression system was. It didn't reach the level of the bottom part of the piping and stuff, but it actually got in there.
yep. No, that basement, it's not the first time it's flooded.
Right.
We've had otters in there. So. Yeah.
All I'm suggesting is that king tides are almost advertised at this point. So let's just mark our calendars a week before to make sure that there's nothing we've done,
Yes.
so that we've done everything we can do to preclude loss there.
Back to John's question, as far as the pictures are concerned, I think the more the public knows what the problem actually is, the better off chances are of gaining their support to actually put in a fix.
Mhm. There may be somebody out there that knows somebody that knows somebody that can help us. So, are we
By the
ready to move on?
Did you know, I don't know if anybody noticed this, but there was an announcement of an awful lot of money that Patty Murray had directed, congressionally directed funding to a lot of different areas in the state, including a whole bunch of ports. And you know, if a project like this gets started and it really turns out to be very, very expensive, maybe we ought to be looking at some kind of contact with whoever we need to contact to see if we can't get some congressionally directed funds.
That's the first place. That's one of the first things we do.
Yeah.
State, federal, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, are we ready for 7.2? David,
Yes.
John?
Yes,
I am.
Okay, broadband phase 2 update. Chris?
Yeah, so right now, we are checking boxes. We've now got the increased prime insurance. We are still working. Mary is trying to get our IE number from sam.gov. The IRU is close to being signed or may even be signed between the Port of Bellingham and Astound, which means that that is the template that we will be working off, right? So we have 4 ports that are partnering together, all with Petrichor and all with Astound. And so instead of each port reinventing the wheel, we work together for economies of scale, so and efficiency. So their IRU is on the desk of the attorney for Astound. And once that is signed, that'll give us our template with Astound. We'll obviously curtail it to our project. In the meantime, we're going through some requests from tribes about any type of ground disturbance. So this is a new thing that just popped up, but we're our next step, like Kara had said, is to go out to bid for design. So once we finish checking all our boxes administratively, that's what we'll be doing. But the IRU should be very close to be available for the board to review. That's all I have for broadband at this time.
Any questions, John, David?
none.
None.
Okay. 7.3 discussion, Greenbank Farm Phase 3 lighting.
Yep, so staff was asked to delay this to this next meeting, and I know that Commissioner Callahan, you were out this morning looking at those 7 lights. 2 of which I know you mentioned that were kind of sitting on the edge of the parking lot. There's actually 4. I don't know if you know that, but there's actually 4 lights that border the parking lot. The other 2 were not. The other 2 were knocked down. Well, they were both knocked down in previous windstorms. So you probably didn't. I don't know if you saw the stump sitting up, but there was orange cones over them.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So the question again becomes whether the board wants to replace these lights or have them removed. They're very rusted at the bottom. They're going to come down at some point in the future. So
I think at the last meeting, wasn't the overall reaction to this Kirk Reynolds concept as being an awful lot of money for just renting something?
yeah, I mean, you made a comment, John, to have the event people absorb the cost of lighting, and I just don't see that happening because that's more expensive than the actual cost of the venue itself. It's just unfortunate that because it's a creative idea. It's unfortunate that the expense to have temporary lighting is so high, because it could have been a viable option if it was a lot less. But it's just a question of we got to do something with those lights. 2 of them blown down. There's 2 others that are in really bad shape. So do we replace them, or do we take them down and cap them, have them professionally disassembled and capped?
So Chris, what would you there are 7 total, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Right, and how would you describe these lights? What if you were to, if somebody were to make a motion as to what to do, how would we be describing this?
They're, it'd be, well, they're grass parking lot lights. We call them stadium lights because they're made to shine down and cover a wide area. So we call them stadium lights, but it would be to replace or remove the current 7 stadium lights that cover the grass parking lot area.
Okay, so are the other commissioners wanting to resolve this today? If so, I'll make a motion.
The nice thing about a motion, John, it allows us to have an official discussion that, the motion can then be,
Got
not passed.
Got it. Got it. So I make
but
a
it allows-
motion. I would like to make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we replace the 7 stadium lights at the Green Bank Farm.
I second the motion.
Okay,
So Chris, have we ever gotten numbers about replacing them?
Yeah, we did. We have one bid already coming in at 32 grand plus tax, so it's about 33, 34 grand. And that's with the company that's done all the previous outside lighting.
So the figure that's there is 36,257.
That is the Green Bank Farm lighting analysis for the rentals. So what this is saying is,
Oh, this says replacement lighting cost of 7 LED lights is $36,257.
oh, I'm sorry. Yes, if you go up to 6 events per year, it's $37,183.32 for a year. That's doing just 6 events. The replacement of the lights are 36. You're right, David, sorry.
So my question is, what is our return on investment on $36,000?
I don't have that. How would I, what's the, that doesn't say, what's the return on investment for replacing the piles at the wharf? I don't have a number for that.
Well, my question is how often do we need to use lighting in that area?
Yeah, so on average, about 6 times per year. That's why I built the model around 6 times. I mean, it may be an event less per year. It may be an event more per year. David, I just kind of took the average. It looks 6 events during the year, mainly during October, November, and December, because we are increasing events now that we have our roof repaired and the heaters are repaired. So it's about 6. So I just don't have a number as far as.
And is that for the purposes of parking or
Well,
for the purposes of actually having an outdoor event
well, right now we're
in those months?
Yeah, so right now it is for parking, outdoor parking. Now, when they used to have events here, large events, they would use those lights at night because the events would run into the night, even in the summertime. We haven't done that yet as a port, but it's still an option that I am still working on. I'd love to hire a third-party company to come in here and do profit sharing with the port and run these big giant events. So, but right now it's basically parking, lit parking at night for private events.
and Chris, as I understand it, there are 2 that I saw today that were right on the parking lot area in front of the buildings. And you say there were 2 others that were there that have to be replaced, and that's for parking, not just for event, but for people using the buildings, correct?
No, so there is 2 lights. You are correct. You have the west side of the parking lot, which is the grass side of the parking lot. There are 4 of the 7 lights that actually line the edge of that parking lot and shine out towards the grass.
Right.
And it will light part of the parking lot. That is correct. But it's really meant to light the grass area moving out towards the solar farm.
And the only other option then to light events that we have would be the rental as opposed to the stadium lights. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Part of the discussion is we just dropped this rental thing totally. You know, as an alternative.
That
You
makes.
know, to me, we either find the money, put up new light poles, put them where they're not going to be backed into, or they have a steel bunker around the base that makes a car bounce off of it and not knock them down.
We've already
You
done that.
know, so, you know, I think in my 2 cents is that where this should end up. Is that, you know, we revisit, you know, putting up new, poles instead of renting, you know, at the same dollar amount.
The discussion on the motion involves the motion is to replace the lighting. So we've already, I think, determined that we're not gonna worry about rentals at this juncture. So
Okay,
Could I would like to go back just a second. David's question about return on investment. If we put those lights up, is there any thought to increasing the rental fees for the events that we are offering to be scheduled?
Yes, we're actually, we've already discussed it. It's gonna be on either the January 11th or the January 25th agenda. We will be increasing our fees from $1,600 an event to either $2,000 to $2,400 for an event, which still puts us at about 55% of what our competitive venues are charging. So yes, we haven't discussed raising the event cost due to the lighting. We've discussed raising the event cost because we know we're very underpriced. But yes, we are looking at raising the cost for our events.
but just again, just for sake of conversation, what type of an event other than parking is required of those lights? What service do they perform for? I mean, what kind of an event would we be doing in the next year or two that would require the use of those lights?
I'm in talks with Penco Brewing to do a brew fest here and a shellfish festival here. That would be at night. And that they wanted that to take place in November. So that would be another one as far as an event.
In November?
Yeah, because that's when they harvest they harvest oysters. So they wanted to do a November event this year. They just couldn't pull it off.
Outdoors?
It would be in the barn for probably the first year to keep it small and then go outdoors with a big giant tent in the future. But you're asking for events, and that's the only thing I have that's even on a radar right now, Caleb.
And what kind of financial generation would that mean for the Port of Coupeville?
I don't know. I don't have any figures. We haven't gotten that deep yet.
the question I'm having in my mind, what is like a Crockett Barn or some of these other event, you know, private for-profit event places? What do they do when they have like 100, you know, people and maybe 50, 75 cars show up? Do they have outdoor lighting around Crockett
No.
Barn, around
No, I've been
Dancing
to all
Fish?
the venues, and they do not have outdoor lighting. It's just a barn with a big grass parking lot. There's no other facilities there at all. So we're unique in the sense that we also have retail, and we're a
The
large,
retail shuts down at 5 o'clock, right?
but we're a much larger facility than what Crockett or some of the other barns charge. They charge around 4,000, I believe, for an event at least. And I knew that because I was working with Kelly from Whidbey Island Weddings and what she was charging her customers to use her barn and the Crockett barn and so forth.
So are you touching on that we have a public safety concept kicking in here, that if somebody drives into our parking area to go walk a dog, go hiking, go look at the solar array, that they need lights to park their car?
Well, People typically, that's a good point. There is a safety. It is a safety issue when it comes to events that use the grass area for parking. But as David said, as David asked, we don't really have any events right now in the winter that are outside. So those events used to occur in the summertime outside, and they would use those lights a lot. But right now, because we're not into these big events, the port doesn't do that. We don't have a need for these lights for big events. But for parking, such as the Whidbey Camino Land Trust, who had their holiday party just a couple weeks back, they had over 100 cars parked in that grass area. So they needed those lights. But again, you got about 4 to 7 of these events a year, so. But I know that we used heavily back when the management group was putting on 2, maybe 3 large events a year with the Highland Games, Loganberry Festival, and so forth.
That was then. That was when there wasn't a lot of options. I think Greenbank Farm was the event center for Whidbey Island, that and the fairgrounds. So
Yeah, I don't know if the fairground was even into big events like what the management group did.
So, John?
Yeah, again, I'm kind of the new kid on the block, so I don't understand about some of the history. But is there an effort on the part of the port to increase the number of events that Greenbank Farm is going to be able to host?
No, we put energy into weddings and private events. I am always looking for and searching for a partner, and I almost had one back in 2017, John, if you'll remember, with Friends of the Farm. Remember that whole thing I had going on until I booked up the entire next year full of weddings. I was looking to get a third party to come in and put on these large events, draw people to the farm, and then they would do a profit share with the port. But the port itself is not in the event business. Large event. We're in weddings and smaller events in Barn A. People who want to rent out the grass area for their events, no doubt, but the port itself does not go out and assemble and execute large events like the Loganberry Festival or the Highland Games back in the day. They tried that back in 2016 by bringing on Kristen, I forget her last name, and that did not work well. And it also takes at least, what I was told, at least 25 to 30 volunteers to put on a major event that would draw thousands and thousands of people.
Yeah, no, that's not really what I was talking about. You mentioned weddings and stuff. Is there any effort to publicize that this is available for weddings in hopes that more people will come to the farm and run events? Yeah.
Publicize, yeah. So we do have an ad in a wedding publication. It just left my head.
Okay.
And we do have the opportunity to increase that advertising, John. It's a little expensive, and I typically don't put that in my marketing budget. Like there's Whidbey wedding wired or wired weddings or something. We take advantage of all the free stuff, but we're booking 26 to 30 events a year, just off the minimal advertising we do, our website information, and our word of mouth.
And we make a little bit of money towards the maintenance of the port.
Yeah, we charge $1,600
or the farm, whatever it is, right?
The events take very little labor to execute,
Right.
because we're a no frills we're a no frills venue. Here's your tables and chairs, you set them up, you take them down. But we're going to be actually building that revenue model up next year, and we also have some other options to even increase the revenue even more. So but yeah.
I would simply direct Commissioner Callahan to our budget for next year for the projected income from events at the farm.
That's a pretty solid number, right? Just based on historical revenue.
We always try to base our number on history, yeah, and then we try to take into account factors that may either increase that or decrease that. And I think this next year, like we did with fuel sales, we looked at almost a decrease. I don't think the number of events, I think we may see a little decline in number of events next year, but it's just so hard to tell. I know we're already booking weddings for next year. I know we're going to increase the price of our venue next year. So it's really kind of a semi-educated guess.
Well, the simple math for the numbers that you've expressed already, Chris, is that if you're charging $2,000 for an event and you're doing 30 events, that's $60,000 in gross revenue. So there's the answer to Commissioner Callahan's question.
Minus labor and
I
yes,
said gross revenue.
yeah.
So,
Well, they're not all, David, they're not all going to be $2,000. I don't want to get in the weeds, but they're not all going to be $2,000 rentals. We have somebody just rent them for a couple hours, half day, so forth, but. So it'd be less than that, to be honest.
Let's deal with the motion in front of us. Are we starting to feel like we
I
have enough?
believe we've exhausted this discussion.
Yeah, I called the motion in front of us to replace the stadium lights. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay.
Nay,
Nay. What did you say, Dave?
I said
Is that-
no.
Okay,
I think this is a topic that first, and I'll give you my reasoning. My reasoning is I think it's really bad timing. I think that we're going into a year of recession probably. And I think that we are going to see a little bit less activity. I also think that we are at the very end of some of the highest labor and material prices that we've seen in a long time. And that's the way that I'm looking at it. So I'm not necessarily really opposed to having lighting there, but I just don't get it at this point. So
No, it would come out of our IDD budget. If that makes it.
there's plenty of things that the IDD budget needs to cover. So
yeah. And I guess I'm coming from personal responsibility, to, when it's dark. And I don't think we should treat ourselves like a regular shopping center, with tons of asphalt and parking lots, lights all over the place. It's in the countryside. And
quite frankly, almost everybody and their brother has a phone that has a flashlight on it.
right.
So if they need to get to their car and they don't use that, that's not really my fault.
Okay. I'm curious
Yeah.
why this is a different approach than parking lot lighting. That you guys are very sensitive to about replacing all of the parking lot lighting around the retail. This is an extension of that into the grass area.
Into what area? What do you call that area?
Which one, John?
The comment about it, the extension into the
grass area. It's just an extension of that's an extension of our parking lot. Which granted is only used several times a year.
And I think that's where I'm reluctant to spend the money when we do have a lot of other things tapping on our budget.
Okay.
Do you understand, John? That I'm not against public safety and all like that, but it's just, we want to light up the grass, or do we want to let somebody use their cell phone to get them back to the car? So the motion does not pass. And we should move on to item 7.4, federal procurement policy options.
Well, I'd like to ask the board one thing then. If you're not going to replace the lights, and these lights are in very bad shape, then I'm going to be getting bids to have the lights removed before they fall down. We've had 2 of the 7 fall down within the last year and a half. So,
I would appreciate you getting those bids and bringing them to the commission
Yeah.
and letting us review it at that time.
okay,
Arb is under his budget, just get it done. So item 7.4, discussion, federal procurement.
yep.
Is Mary
So-
going to,
Yeah, so Mary's going to jump in and, quickly take you through it. What we did was I think we all agreed that the variance, we called it variance 2, was the option that we would like to follow. It was also the chosen option for the state auditor, Officer Scott. And Mary has incorporated all of his feedback, gone through the policy once more. And I think we have a pretty darn good federal procurement policy as at least a start to all these new federal projects that the port is for the first time undertaking. So with that, Mary, anything you want to add to that?
What we added was the debarment, and that we will check the list annually. I took the code of conduct that was on the draft and copied that and put that on this variant of it to make sure that's covered, which is necessary for our federal procurement plan.
And I'm
And that
gonna,
is all.
so I don't know if any board has any chance to have read this. But this is the final.
so Commissioner Callahan, you've been our eagle eye legal commissioner.
Yeah. I have not read this thing in detail. I just got it a couple of days ago, and it's a pretty complex document.
Right.
So I would prefer, if we're gonna vote on this, that we do it next month and gives ourselves an opportunity to go over it in some detail. And I do have one other question, and that is whether or not there is any plan to have this reviewed by council after it's been completed.
Well, it was created by council from the Port of Everett. So if the board feels more comfortable, I send this to an attorney to review, then I will do that. But we feel pretty confident because these things are based around the actual RCWs, that we all have to follow. So.
Commissioner Callahan, I think sometimes what we do is we plagiarize other ports, relying on their nifty swifty attorney to have reviewed it and done a good job, drafting something. So when we slap our name on the appropriate spots of their document, we're all going to sink or swim together with the other
I
ports.
think, I think that's a very, why redo stuff that other people have done? But my understanding is we've made changes to the Port of Everett document. So,
The only changes we really made were, because they do huge federal projects, is we took feedback from the state auditor and incorporated that. Those are the really only changes that we made, right, Mary?
Yes.
I like to have something, particularly when you're dealing with the federal government and spending its money, to make sure that all the dots, all the T's are crossed and the I's dotted. And, if somebody brought this to me as an attorney and said, we just copied this from you and we used it somewhere else, so are you going to still stand behind it? My answer would be no. You didn't look at what I reviewed. You made some changes, and until I see what those changes are and review it, then I really can't say that I think it's legally sufficient.
Well, again, we follow the laws of the RCWs and what the federal government lays down. So we're not reinventing any wheel. We're not making up any procedures. We're checking the boxes that the federal government, the state require us to do. So that's why a lot of these policies, when Mary was going through them, they'll have a statement that says, refer to RCW blah and blah. They don't list everything out because we all have to follow the same rules and guidelines.
But this is not just the RCW. You're looking at the federal acquisition regulation that has to be followed, rather, which is,
Follow those like every other port. We will anyways. We don't have any experience in doing this, but we will. So if you want us to go get an attorney to review this, we can do that.
I would actually like, before we get to that part, I think I would rather like to, for me anyway, I'd like a little more time to review the document and see if I have any problems at all.
Sure. Mary, can you resend the, or maybe just highlight the areas that Scott, the state auditor, made suggestions on, so at least Commissioner Callahan.
Of course,
Yeah,
yes.
you know what was changed, because other than this, it's basically a Port of Everett document that's been modified to us, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
Do you have any idea when they drafted theirs? How many years ago?
I do not.
Would you like her to find out?
Yes, please.
Okay,
So Chris, you're having the original that we got from the Port of Everett that'll be supplied to Commissioner Callahan. And then our updated Port of Coupeville version for him to look at, both copies, right? So you'll be able to see,
Yeah, we can do that. Got the original, right, Mary?
would that
Mhm.
help, John? To see the original?
Yeah, that would help.
I mean,
Okay.
you're trying to compare two 14-page documents, but good luck.
Hey, nobody said he had a life.
A lot of reading, yeah. I'm sure John can do it.
Well,
So
are
is
not,
there a
the-
deadline for this to be done?
are not these procedures mandated by the federal government?
They are, that's what I'm
They
trying
are.
to say. We have to follow them like everyone else, but, you know, we didn't reinvent anything. We just have to check boxes like everyone else.
But we're making a checklist of what the federal government tells us we need to do
Yes,
to participate in their programs, correct?
federal funding, right. It's okay,
And David, there was the document that we're looking at right now is very detailed. And as I think I mentioned last time, I've seen documents that just refer to the federal system, saying generally you have to follow the federal acquisition regulations if you're spending federal money or money that's controlled by the feds. This one is very specific, and it has various levels of action. So if it's over $2,500, it has to be this. If it's over this amount of money, it should be that. Well, I have not had the time to actually look at the FAR right now and look and see whether or not those numbers are still accurate. That's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about in terms of a review.
Well, Mary, haven't you done that?
and the state auditor, when he looked at it, looked at the thresholds as well.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, but we're still happy to send you both versions, John. So we'll get you the original from Everett, we'll get you this one. And then Mary will highlight the sentences that we implemented due to the feedback of the auditor, because ultimately, the one we answer to is the auditor. We don't answer to the federal government, we answer to the auditor on whether we follow federal guidelines or not.
Well, if we don't follow the federal guidelines properly, there's a chance that we won't get federal money.
That is correct.
Agree with that?
That is correct. Yeah, we
So-
want to be in compliance, right?
So I think, am I correct, John? That's what your concerns are?
I am. I am concerned about that because, you know, the state auditor is familiar with the RCW and is a person who is very familiar with the requirements of state law versus what we're doing and what we're buying in the port. The federal part of that is a totally different animal. And you know, I'm sure the state auditor has a lot of knowledge about it, but I would really hate to find out that if you matched up something that the state said you could do, but the federal government said you couldn't do, and we went ahead and did it, then you're right, we could endanger the money that is coming from the federal government for these various grants.
So am I correct that the only thing that we're getting from the federal government currently is broadband based?
Currently, yes.
Okay,
Well, there was other federal, not to muddy the waters, but there was other federal funds that were channeled through the state. But as far as a federally backed grant, yes, it's the broadband. And it's a beast. It really is. I agree with John. It's a beast. Just not only just navigating a broadband project, but navigating the federal requirements for one. I mean, that's what Mary's.
Did we ever get that sam.gov thing sorted out?
No, I turned that over to Mary. She thinks she sent them a document that what they want to see is an invoice, something that's official. And they wouldn't accept our level of incorporation, which Mary found. They want to see like a PSE bill that says Port of Coupeville, 7651 Road, Suite E, Green Bank, Washington. We have no such thing because we don't have a mailing address at 7651 Road. So it's kind of ridiculous, but Mary thinks she had sent them a document. I sent them a PSE bill, but they did not feel that that was appropriate enough, even though we've been around since 1967. So we have not solved it, John. Yeah.
It was just a
And they're
segue.
closed this week.
Yeah, they're closed the whole week.
Mhm.
So we're safe for a while.
Well, that's one of those check boxes, John, that I mentioned earlier on the broadband review. That's just one of those check boxes for us.
Okay. We ready to move on?
well, I think Commissioner Callahan is happy to review this document and give us some insight once he does that. I mean, I can read this and I have no idea whether it falls into the government's realm of reality or not. So,
Right. And honestly, neither do we, other than what we have gotten from the Port of Everett and the Port of Anacortes and the city of Snohomish. So we're just all following the same bank of rules. And I think it's smart that, like John said, that we make sure that we have all the rules that we can look at. I know that I'm already talking to
we
Karen.
talked with the town of Coupeville because they get federal money.
No, I haven't talked to the town of Coupeville. I've been really conversing with other ports through Petrichor.
Okay.
You know, because they've done federal funds. You know, Port of Bellingham has done federal. I mean, they have a full-time person. That's all they do is work on broadband. So I've been talking to them. That's where I got this 14-point federal checklist that Mary's studying and looking at, because this is all new territory for us. So we're gonna have to be extra careful as we go forward.
Well, maybe we could get a couple of different federal grant procurement and contract procedural documents from other entities.
We did do that. That's what we did. We got it from the town of Snohomish, the city of Snohomish, the Port of Anacortes, and the Port of Everett, and there was one other one.
Okay,
We did all that.
I
That's
mean,
why we had 2 options at the last meeting.
okay.
They pretty much said the same thing, right, Mary? Just in different ways. We all like this version because it laid out more detail and more of a checklist for us, more of a visual guideline. Instead of refer to RCW this, we would actually have more of a checklist built into it. So, and it's just this is just the first one. You know, if laws change or procedures change, or we need to update it to better track, then we will do that. And we'll present, you know, this will be backed up by a resolution as well. So if you guys get this next week and all is good to go, I will then need to create a resolution, or Mary, for you guys to finally approve it. So you have time.
So Chris, clarify for me, earlier you answered somebody's question about the only federal funds were broadband. I thought the only funds we got were state public works board for the project.
No, those are actually federal funds through the state. And when it all shook out finally, John, because that's why I understood too, right, in the beginning, but when it finally shook out, they were being treated as federal funds, and we have to follow the construction procurement process under the
Gotcha.
federal guidelines.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. It was like, whoa, yeah,
Also the EPA grant that we're working on.
ah, yep. Yep.
So Commissioner Callahan, if we get in trouble, we're going to blame the state Public Works Board.
No, look, one of the problems with having such a detailed document is somebody's gonna have to keep their eye on the changes to the federal procurement regulations on a daily basis, not a daily basis, but you know, it's not the kind of a document when you're as detailed as this document is about what the various thresholds and stuff are. You know, you can't let this document sit for a couple of years. Somebody's got to look at it every year and make sure that all these things are correct.
You are absolutely right, because legislation changes every year, John, and that's Mary's job. So she'll be going to some of these WIPA legislative committees, you know, and then of
And
course,
that was also put into the new procurement plan, was that we will update it yearly.
yep,
Great, thank you.
yeah, good point. Thank you, Mary.
Okay. Item 8, new business, 8.1, introduction. Board of Commissioners officer assignments for 2023.
Yeah, I remembered last year that you guys wanted to discuss it before the end of the year and then make your adjustments on January 11th. So that's why I added it to the agenda.
And I noticed the Port of Skagit at their last business meeting, they nailed down this topic at that meeting this month. So we're kind of in line with the timing of, you know, what I consider, you know, our neighbor port to the north. So typically, David and John, the presiding officer moves down to the secretary treasurer position. The person that was the vice president moves up to be the presiding officer. The secretary treasurer moves up to be the vice president, correct? David? Hasn't that the way
I
it's
believe
worked?
that's kind of how we've rotated over the years, but we've had, you know, I was an interim person for a while and then got elected, and John is now an interim person, and we've had people, I mean, so both John and I will be up for re-election next year. You will not be. I don't, and I'm just blithering here. So
John, are you up for election next year?
Commissioner Callahan will be.
Because he was appointed.
Yeah.
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 And I don't know that there's any official interim port commissioner. You're either appointed or elected. And then you're a port commissioner.
Well,
So
okay.
I thought Commissioner Callahan would go on the ballot
if he throws his hat in the ring.
if he throws his hat in the ring. He'd go on the ballot. That's what I thought, but
That's why we want to be nice to
that's
him.
what I just said. He'll be up for re-election next year.
okay. I just heard.
As will the District 1 seat.
Right.
But
And I think that's a separate issue from who's going to be the presiding officer, the treasurer, the vice
it
president.
is, I was just talking about who's going to be around the longest. And we know that you're going to be around the longest because you were just elected most recently.
Yeah, but I'm the most tired. But the tread has been stripped off my tires. They're bald. No, John, not your kind of bald.
John is tightly groomed. He's not bald.
So
I have no particular view about who should be president, vice president, or secretary in the coming year. It's, I'm happy to defer to either or both of the other commissioners.
Well, you got another year on your tenure though, right?
Yes, I have 2023
23.
is the 4th year of my term.
And how did you escape not, have you've been presiding officer already?
Yes,
I
it
was last year.
was last
Ah,
year.
okay, yeah, right.
I was in
How time
2020.
flies. How time flies. All I know is I'd like to step back from being presiding officer because it's so much fun. And then just have you move up to that position like normal. John would move up to be vice president. I'd slide back down to the secretary treasurer position. And John, what it means for you is that if David is incapacitated or can't make a meeting, then you step up to be the presiding officer at that meeting, you know, and run the meeting. So do we want to go with that and me make a motion to that effect? I don't know that I've seen it done as a motion in previous years at the Port of Coupeville.
Yeah, typically we've done it at the first meeting of the year.
Right.
Okay. So do we leave that discussion where it lays?
Well, we
Yeah.
could, I mean, we could do it now so that when we started the new year, that would be in place if we wanted to.
I think that's what I saw Skagit do the other day. They just went ahead and nailed it down and had all 3 commissioners, you know, step up to the different positions that they were going to be. So I make a
Do you have any input into this, Commissioner Callahan?
No, look, I'm, you know, whatever you guys want me to do, I'm happy to do.
Be careful there, sir.
Next time the water is flooding into the collections building, you're going to have to throw your body in front of the otters.
Or would you like to be the presiding officer?
Who, me?
Yes.
No, I'm too new to this thing.
Okay.
Somebody with some more, David, I think you would be more experienced and be able to handle it better than I would at this point.
Hey, I'm going to make a motion that in 2023, that Commissioner Day be the presiding officer, that Commissioner Callahan be the vice president, and Commissioner Mashazik be the secretary treasurer. Do I hear a second?
I'll
Callahan,
second it.
okay. Boy, this is our toughest vote yet.
If David didn't,
Okay,
Don, you would have been the president again.
we pre-discussed this puppy quite a bit. All in favor of the motion to appoint the officers for 2023, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I didn't hear you, Commissioner Callahan.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Item 9, executive session. We determined that the change of the agenda was not needed. So we're at our second public comment. Same rules apply for public comment.
There is no public comment.
There's no public to comment.
Nope.
Okay. Moving on to agenda item 11, commissioner discussion. So we've already done the officers. Anything else we want to discuss?
I would really like to get us that collection of priorities that has been discussed over the last couple months. I think that it's high time that we've never really done that. We've kind of let fix-it stuff get in the way of some underlying planning. And I think that it would be a good idea to develop, a list of, our top 5 or 10 or 3 or whatever priorities, to form a structure of, that, so that we can, put things to the side that are less important, and concentrate on those things that really are important. I think it would ultimately move meetings forward quicker and get our attention focused on the growth of the port.
Yeah, what's important. So I actually typed up my priority list. So as you can see, it's quite extensive because, I'm one of those whiteboard crazy kind of people, David, right? That I like to
You're a
put
noodler.
anything.
You're a noodler, John.
I'm a noodler, yes. And at the same time, I recognize, what's more important, but it helped me. It actually helped me to say what's important because I actually found something I had to move up the priority list that I thought of, later in making that list. And so it did, clarification for me, because I had things like, the airport, the broadband, workforce housing, expanding the port, and then I think of other community projects like, the county is suffering with, the septage. Didn't somebody have a problem with their septic system?
Well, I'm sure a lot of people had problems with their septic system yesterday.
Yeah, but I mean, now it's like we're paying an arm and a leg to have our septics pumped because County is charging an arm and a leg to take septage, and people are now driving all the way over to LaConner because it's cheaper to dump their septic tank truck there. And we're paying the price because of Island County raising their rates. So, is there a way that there's an infrastructure solution to something like that actually helps everybody in the community, say, that's on a septic system? So I have a lot of things on my list, which are, far ranging, maybe have a, slim to no chance of really happening in my lifetime. But if they get on some, priority list, maybe everything else will get knocked off the list at some point. And some future commissioner will say, well, what about number 7 on the list? We've already done the top 6. And all of a sudden something happens on
Well,
a
I think
project
it'd
like
be great to find the top 6.
I took that on 2 meetings ago, and I have to admit that I've not been able to provide you guys with anything in writing, but I have it. And I will get it to Chris, what is today?
Was this something that you and Chris have worked together on?
No, that's the problem. Chris has been able to give me a list of projects, and we discussed it once on the phone.
Okay,
But the next step for me is to get the writing document to Chris. And after he's had an opportunity to look at it, he and I can confer either in person or phone, make some final adjustments, and then send it to you, both of you guys, and ask for your input. I can tell you what it envisions right now. It envisions a list of all of the projects that we have, major projects, not the really small things, and a set of criteria. And for you to consider as you decide what the highest priorities are in your world. And then you'll end up assigning a number from 1 to 10 in 2 different categories. And at the end of the exercise, you'll end up with a numerical score as to which is your top priorities. We would then meld the 3 commissioners' inputs into a final document, which would give us something to actually sit down and look at and say, yeah, these are our priorities and this is what we should do. Or I disagree with this and I need to move, something needs to move up or down or whatever. But that's the process that I'm involved in right now. And I have the criteria and I now have the white work list. I just need to figure out how to manipulate the Excel file. So,
Well, I mean,
And
that,
convert it to a PDF.
that process sounds perfectly reasonable to me, and I'm, my priority has always been at the wharf,
Mhm.
because that's where my constituents' priority has always seemed to be.
Uh-huh.
So, but I'm obviously not just the commissioner for District 1, I'm the commissioner from north to south as well as you guys are. And I think that we've opened a bunch of doors over the last few years at the Port of Coupeville. And, probably the fortunate and unfortunate part of that is that all those doors open into Chris's office.
Yes, they do.
And
Yes, they do.
we are now to the point where we are spending nearly all of our tax revenue on labor. And I think that that's important to prioritize how
Absolutely.
we make that work for the people who live in our districts and our port as a whole.
Absolutely.
So
The clarifying concept I hear there, though, you were elected by everybody in the tax district. I was elected by everybody in the Coupeville tax district. And so John would be. We have to
I agree
resign.
with you. That's what I just said. But
Yeah, so,
you
don't have
I
a
ran
claim.
based on where I live and what's important to me, and the people that I have communicated with during that time. And the wharf has, and the wharf has always been my number one priority. So,
And what's your number two?
yeah, I'm not sure what my number two is. I have other priorities, but I don't have them ranked at this point. So,
Well, the wharf is a property. There are endless projects underneath each property, as well as other projects that Commissioner Mashasek would like to see going forward, which is representative of his project list. So I think it's a great exercise you guys are attempting to do. I think it's going to be great because what Commissioner Callahan is doing is working off the capital finance.
right.
And once that gets set, then John could also input his priorities. You can input yours, David, because it's not just the wharf, it's the dock, it's everything, right? As well as the farm. So I think it's a good exercise. Look,
And there are certain things that you might decide that you really want. Okay. But there is absolutely no way that it's ever going to happen where there's no funding and no identified sources of funding. So that whatever it is that you would really like to have, maybe that moves down on the priority list because of, other factors. So anyway,
Actually, I can tell you what my second priority is. And that my second priority is to expand the Port of Coupeville, so that there's more money to do all the things that need to be done.
And that's a really great example of something that would be added to the list and then discussed as to how important that is. Very, very important,
because that's not actually a physical asset project in a sense. We're not fixing a roof or replace or dredging. It's expansion. And those
I mean, that to me, that's the commissioners. The commissioners aren't out there fixing stuff. The commissioners are out there theoretically planning and overseeing. So developing things. So I would just like to get that underway as quickly as possible. That was how we started the conversation.
I really don't have anything to do before the next meeting. Procurement or anything. So I will make a determined effort to get something done to Chris within the next 2 weeks. Okay,
Yeah. As we end the year, I want to again congratulate John and myself on picking a very viable,
Capable.
knowledgeable and capable individual to fill the open commissioner seat in District 3 and continue to welcome you aboard, John. I think you're a much needed asset to this board, and I really appreciate your input and your thought process, because I think it's different than the other John has and different than mine. I appreciate it a lot.
thank
And
you.
I hope all you guys have some kind of New Year's celebration that allows you to relax and enjoy and continue to be around family and that kind of thing. And I think the Port of Coupeville's had an okay year. And I look forward to a better one in 23.
And I'd like to put it out there that with all the festivities that can occur this time of the year, it is okay for port commissioners can be in the proximity of each other without it being the end of the world. We're just not supposed to talk about port business. Okay?
Are
All
you
the other
inviting
things
us
that go
over
on.
for dinner?
It depends. Are you going to do your whatchamacallit?
Or is it, or just for a toast?
Maybe.
Thank
Thanks,
you
Scott.
guys. By the way, I'm really proud to be serving on this group with this group rather. And I agree. You need 3 different kinds of personalities on a 3-person board to get, everything out on the open and make an informed decision. So thank you very much.
Yep. So, well, with that, item 12 is the adjourn the meeting. So if there's no hand raised.
I'll second the motion.
Okay.
And then could I ask Chris, could I talk to you on the phone immediately afterwards, an administrative thing about the computer? Could I give you a call?
Yeah, absolutely. Was the meeting adjourned?
And the car report too, right? You need to get the car report.
Yeah, I need to ask him, was the meeting officially adjourned? I didn't hear a time.
I adjourn at 3:17.